All right, hey, first time guest on the show. Really excited to have Tyler McComas on the show. He is the host of the Rush Sports Talk 1400 out of Oklahoma. Our good buddy Ty Richardson said, hey, if you want to have Oklahoma guests on, you got to get Tyler on the show. So, Tyler, I appreciate you taking the time here.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. I mean, we're just so excited for the SEC. We've been excited for 3 years now, or ever when it was since it was first released. And it's just funny how this is a new chapter in a rich history of Oklahoma football. It's a new chapter. This will begin kind of a new era of the program around here. But it's just so funny. The SEC, more than any other conference, other teams essentially they're just switching the teams that they play, and there's not a lot of difference. But Michael, I'd love to take you into at some point today what it's meant for the city of Norman, what leaders in the city of Norman have been doing over the course of the past couple of years to get ready for this, because you're not just changing the teams that you play every single year. This is going to totally change the city of Norman, totally change the Oklahoma City metro area. It's a massive, massive deal for the state, man. It's awesome. It's all good.
Yeah, let's just start right there because obviously, it's right around the corner. July 1 is when Oklahoma and Texas will officially join the conference, and we were talking off air. They're planning a big event. Can you give any insight into what you know about it, what they plan to do, and just kind of what we could be looking at come July 1?
Well, it's such a big deal that your friend Paul Feinbaum's going to be in town doing his show live in Norman that day. But talked to the athletic director yesterday, and it kind of feels like it's going to be somewhat of a statewide thing. Like maybe they start the day in Tulsa and kind of get Tulsa involved with it. Then they'll drive down to Oklahoma City and do some things in OKC. But Norman, it's going to be a massive deal. I'm doing my show, Campus Corner, which for those that have never been to Norman before, Campus Corner in Norman is like the Strip at Alabama. It's like Dixon Street in Fayetteville. It's like our bar strip of restaurants that are right by the stadium. So that's going to have a lot of things going on. There's some things that they haven't even announced yet, but essentially it's just going to be a giant celebration all day long. And Paul Feinbaum was here for the OU spring game back in April. He's going to make the return trip to it. So, and I'm sure he's not going to be the only SEC representative. The commissioner, I found that out yesterday. He's going to be here for that day as well. It's just going to be just a massive celebration, essentially, is what it's going to be.
Right, it's a big deal when I'm going to be there, and I'm even trying to drag my co-host cousin Shay to come out there. So not that we're a big deal by any means, but it means a lot to us that Oklahoma's coming into the SEC. So excited about it. But I wanted to ask you about Brett Venables because hey, every Oklahoma fan I hear from, every media personality I hear from, he's on great standing. But I mean, a year ago, I thought it was a legitimate question to ask everybody. Will he be the head coach when the Sooners make it to the SEC? And for a better portion of the year, they were a top 10 team in the country. So I'm certainly not saying he's on any kind of hot seat or anything like that. But when you change over both coordinators, coming into a new conference, a lot of unknowns. What can you tell us about his standing in Norman and just the level of support essentially that he's got?
No, it's a good question because I like to check in with our listeners from time to time, just like, hey, how are we doing here, guys? Like the 6-7 season was the worst season that you had since 1998. People aren't used to losing like that around here. You're just not. I mean, you're used to at worst a 10-2 type of season. You're still fighting for a conference championship. So I still like to check in from time to time. How are we? What's the approval rating? And 6-7 season, then a 10-3 season last year that was better, but still was disappointing because you lost to Kansas, Oklahoma State, Arizona. You led all three of those games. You thought you were the better team. The approval rate is still extremely high. Now, your question back might be, well, why is that the case if that fan base has felt like it's been back-to-back kind of disappointing years? Well, I think for a number of reasons. One, and you probably heard this quite a bit, the recruiting's been fantastic since he's got here. And in fact, as we're talking right now, if you go look on Rivals, OU's got the number 3 class for 2025. They got the number 1 class in the SEC. I don't think that's necessarily going to hold up once we get to signing day, but OU will have another top 10 class. And why they've been able to pull in better, higher ranked recruiting classes since Lincoln Riley left is because they're getting defensive studs, man. They got that 5-star interior defensive lineman that they weren't going to get previously with the previous staff. You got a true freshman, his teammates, Jaden Jackson, who looked really, really good this spring. He's going to be a contributor. You get a 5-star defensive lineman in the previous class. So I think why the approval rating is still really high is that everyone here can tell that he's building it the right way. Because this is a savvy fan base. It's a smart fan base. It can get crazy at times, just like every other SEC fan base out there. So we'll fit right in that regard. But this has, if you go back and look at all of OU's 7 national championship seasons, they've never won a national championship without an elite defense. So I think that was kind of the knock on Lincoln Riley for quite some time, is he was trying to win away in that this program has never really tried to win consistently, which was, let's just outscore. We don't care about defense. Fan base didn't really love that. You're winning. You're going to conference championship games. You're going to college football playoffs. But look what was happening when you were going to the college football playoff. LSU could have scored 100 on you in the Peach Bowl back in 2019 if they would have wanted to. So the approval rating is still high because I think this fan base recognizes how he's trying to build this, which is a defensive-led program, defensive-led team, and there's still a lot of faith that he's going to get this place to where it needs to be on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and I'm glad you went there because I've been saying I think Oklahoma's going to come in here and have a top 4 defense in the SEC immediately. And again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Oklahoma at all when I say that, because I throw in the caveat that, the SEC used to be the defensive conference. Now we've kind of shifted to more offensive. But outside of Georgia, there's not one that I say Oklahoma can't be better than them. So would it stun you? Would it even surprise you, really, if Oklahoma came in their first year and they had a top 3 defense in the SEC?
That's my expectation. And I heard you say that on Monday, by the way, that you expected to be a top 4 defense. And I said, that's right on, because you even kind of ranked it how I would rank it right now. Georgia's got to be the number 1 defense, but after that, I think there's a big question mark in this league about who's going to be the 2nd and 3rd defense. I mean, Alabama has been there for a while, but losing Caleb Downs, losing some of the pieces, a new head coach, maybe they're still there. We'll see. I like Tennessee's defensive line. A guy like James Pierce, he's really good, but there's not that clear-cut 2 or 3, and I absolutely think OU can be a top 3 defense next year, maybe even that number 2 defense right behind Georgia. And here's why I think that. Because at every level of the defense, they're going to be as good as they've been in a decade. And now I realize the bar for that has not been high over the course of the past decade, but they got Danny Stutzman coming back, who's going to be a front runner for the Butkus Award. Dude's legit. He's the best linebacker they've had in a long time. They got Billy Bowman in the secondary at safety. I thought he should have been a finalist for the Thorpe Award last year. He'll be one of the front runners this year. And then the story of the offseason around here is they got Dominic Williams in the transfer portal. And they got it because of NIL. And though I would take one of your Broklahoma T-shirts, Michael, I would. It's not Broklahoma anymore if they're winning out in the NIL game over LSU and Texas and Missouri and all that. So that was a big thing a few weeks ago, because the Broklahoma jokes have been big around here. Maybe OU's reluctant to play the game a little bit. Well, they showed with that one that they're willing to go out and get who they want. And that guy is an instant plug-and-play starter on the interior of the defensive line. We'll see if he's one of their better D linemen in the SEC. This guy was a freshman All-American his first year at TCU when they played for a national championship. Across the defensive line, it's as good as they've been in a decade. Backer, that's the strength of this team. It's not just Stutzman. They're loaded with depth there. And at corner and safety, man, they're good. So if the thought around the SEC is, well, this is the same old Oklahoma, it's the same old OU that scores a lot of points and gives them up just as quickly. That's not the case anymore, man. This defense is legit, and it's going to be the best part of this football team this year.
It's so funny. I was not going to ask you about the Broklahoma and things of that nature, but because I know the people that will be listening to this, they don't care for that. But a lot of the other fans, that was a very popular thing. Like so that's why we put it out there. That has actually been our top seller since we put that out there.
Wow.
Okay. But the point being is, I credit Oklahoma, because I think when you come into this league, when you're weak somewhere, or weak, maybe not even the right word, but just somewhere's, if it's not a strength, it's going to get exploited immediately. And the quicker you adjust, The quicker that's why Nick Saban. I know I think he's the best recruiter of all time. I think he's the best coach of all time. But his ability to adapt is what kept him at the top longer than anybody in this sport's history. And people like Dabo Swinney fail to adapt, and it catches up to you. It can catch up to you really quick in this conference. So I think Oklahoma does a tremendous job seeing where the rest of the league was and what they were spending and making that adjustment. But I did want to ask you too, real quick, on because they have new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. I know Seth Luttrell, he was already on staff, and then Zach Alley, he's worked with Venables before. So, what's the anticipation that are both? Even though it is two new coordinators, we're not drastically changing anything on the offensive or defensive side of the ball, are we?
It's as much continuity as you can have with two new coordinators. And I've seen that a lot throughout this offseason with people predicting how, average, how bad, or just where OU is going to be this year. Well, they also got two new coordinators. And that's true. They did. Jeff Lebby's at Mississippi State now. But Seth Luttrell was on the staff last year as an analyst and heavily involved with the offense as well. So is he going to be a better OC than Jeff Lebby, a better play caller? Time will tell. I will tell you that the fan base, not a big fan of Jeff Lebby and some of the play calling that he had at times last year. If you want to make another T-shirt that's cruel towards OU, make a jet sweep joke because Jet Lebby was his nickname around here. OU fans still have an issue with that. But you got as much continuity as you could possibly ask for a new OC. For a guy that, he played here and won a championship, but he was also on staff last year. And in terms of Zach Alley, here's what I tell everyone. One, this guy is a mini Brett Venables. The way that he talks, the mannerisms, it's kind of freaky just how much of a mini Brett Venables that he is, and he worked with him so long at Clemson. And number two, okay, Zach Alley's the defensive coordinator by name. But who do we think is really in charge of the defense? Who do we really think is going to be calling defense at the most critical junctures of the game? Because if you look out throughout the course of college football history, what Brent did at OU, what Brent did at Clemson, heck, what Brent did at Kansas State, even though he wasn't the DC, Brent's one of the most accomplished defensive coordinators this sport has seen in 40, 50 years. So, yeah, he's the head coach. Yes, he's taking on more of a CEO role, but come on, man. This is still Brent's defense at the end of the day. He's still in there coaching with the linebackers every single day. Two new coordinators is a big deal, and I'm not just trying to throw it away, but, man, it's as much continuity as you can ask for with two big changes like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, also changed at the quarterback spot with Jackson Arnold, who I thought in the bowl game, I think the fairest way to say it is he just looked like a true freshman making his first start against a quality opponent. He had some bad picks, but he had some outstanding plays as well, and nearly led Oklahoma back to win that football game. What is a fair expectation? Because some Oklahoma fans seem to be over the moon, and I'm not discounting him by any means, but it's usually that second year as a starter where we see a player of this caliber be among the best in the SEC. So what is a fair expectation for Jackson Arnold?
To look like a first-year starter, man. I don't think it's going to be as, one side or the other as the bowl game where he had three interceptions in that game. But I think he's going to look like a first-year starter with a high ceiling. I think that he's going to make some tremendous plays like he did in the Alamo Bowl because the kid's got arm strength. He's got accuracy. He can move around and make plays. You're going to see some high-level plays for Jackson Arnold this year. But at the same time, I don't expect to see him at the top of, he was the SEC's best quarterback or one of the SEC's best quarterbacks when it comes to interceptions. I think that he's going to throw some picks this year, and he's going to make some mistakes. But the ceiling is undeniable right now for this kid. He was a 5-star for a reason. Everyone's excited about him for a reason, hoping that Alamo Bowl really gave him some valuable experience to carry over to this year. But, this is a step up in competition. And OU's got a very, very just really tough schedule, as I'm sure you guys have laid out several times this offseason. I expect the overall play to be solid. It'd be good. How about I think Jackson Arnold will be fine, though I think there'll be mistakes. Michael, when it comes to the offense, I'm more concerned about what's the situation around Jackson Arnold. Because I think the receivers are going to be great. Deion Burks is a star, man. I think he's the best player on this offense. Got a chance to be all SEC, and I don't say that lightly, especially because one of those spots will be taken by Luther Burden most likely. But what's
Right.
the offensive line look like? What's the run game look like? If the offensive line can protect him consistently, and I've got concerns that that's going to be the case. If the running game can be consistent, and I've got concerns that that's going to be the case, but if those things can happen and be a little bit better than I think Arnold will be fine. But if there's consistent pressure in his face and they can't run the ball as well as they did in the Big 12, then that's going to equal some real concerns for your first year starter at quarterback.
Right. And I'm glad you went there because I was just wanted to phrase it to you this way, Tyler. How tired are you of talking about the offensive line? Because that's all anybody wants to talk about, it seemingly, when it comes to the Sooners. I don't know if you saw this, but I recently accumulated all the offensive line snaps returning, not including any transfers or anything, all across the SEC. And Oklahoma, no surprise, 15th out of 16th, returning only 17% of their offensive line snaps. Now, they have added tons of guys in the portal, so that's a little bit of a skewed stat. So I'm not saying that it's going to be a train wreck because they've certainly added some nice players, but maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, how big of a concern is that heading into their first season in the SEC?
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be about an 8 to me. I mean, it's the biggest concern of the football team. I think most of the fans would agree with that. I do think their starting five could be okay. I think the five that they put out there for game one could be solid. In no way is it going to be great or dominate a defensive line like Tennessee's, but I think it could be solid. My question is, man, what's the two deep look like? Because in a schedule like this, where you're playing a tough schedule, it's the SEC, you're going to need more than your starting five, man. You are. And I think starting five could be okay. I'm really concerned about what they have the two deep after that. You'd be getting in a
Mm-hmm.
spot where you're playing a lot of young freshmen, offensive linemen, a lot of guys that haven't played a lot of snaps. That Caden Green portal entry to Missouri, I mean, really, really affected things and really hurt things. And it's a big reason why everyone here can't stand Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz now. Oh man, the things that are being said about Drink and Missouri around here this offseason. That game's going to be fascinating in Columbia later on this year. You had Caden Green back, you feel better about it, but you've added a lot of portal guys, like you said, and they added Branson Hickman from SMU this spring, who's going to be their starting center because their starting center this spring got hurt and he may be out until the start of the season. So you're going to see a lot of transfer portal guys, but you're hoping this offensive line class that you brought in last year, a lot of those guys could get to speed because you're going to need more than the five. But outside the five, I'm pretty concerned about that group.
Yeah, and be careful how you answer this, Tyler, because I'm a Tennessee graduate. My co-host is a diehard Tennessee fan. Is and just it's weird how things work out. But Oklahoma's first SEC game will be against Tennessee in Norman. Cannot wait for that matchup. But do you think that will that game be more personal for Josh Heupel, or will it be more personal, you think, to Oklahoma and the fans there that are? I'm very interested to see how they greet, or if they even greet Heupel at all.
Everyone around here still loves Josh Heupel. And I know that the offensive coordinator stint did not go well here. And he's still hurt by that. And I don't blame him. I mean, he was kind of the scapegoat to an 8-5 season back in 2014. And I think in his defense, it's, well, you keep me around for one more year and Baker Mayfield's my quarterback, then what ends up happening? So there were hard feelings at the time from the fan base towards Josh Heupel. It's all out the window. And we've talked a lot this offseason about cool things OU could do to honor Josh Heupel. You got to do some sort of a video. You got to do something to honor him because he's the most important player of the Bob Stoops era. That's not my opinion. That's what Bob Stoops has told us multiple times this offseason. I mean, he was the last quarterback here to win a national championship. People still love him. Now, knowing Josh's personality, if you really made it a big deal that weekend and showed ways to honor him, he's going to get super uncomfortable about that. But he was in Vegas last year or maybe the year before because Roy Williams was getting inducted in the College Football Hall of Fame. And my co-host, Teddy Lehman, who won a Buckus Award here, was out there because he and Roy were teammates. And Josh Heupel showed up out there. It's cool to everyone. I don't think – I think Josh's hard feelings are towards Bob Stoops still now because that's who ultimately fired him. But to OU itself and to the guys he played with, I don't think that those hard feelings are there. So to answer your question, I mean, it's going to be an emotional day for the OU fans to see Josh again. And I just think everyone's going to want to give him a warm embrace. I really do. No one's upset about that now. Everyone's happy for his success. In fact, when Tennessee had that great year 2 years ago, everyone was rooting for Tennessee to make a college football playoff that year. We were all super stoked when they beat Alabama in Knoxville and that incredible scene that was there. And he's got the cigar in his mouth after that game and everything. So I do think the Bob Stoops, Josh Heupel relationship, maybe not super great. I hope that's not the case, but I know from the OU side of things, they're gonna show Josh Heupel like how much he means to this fan base still.
Well, I can promise you, Tyler, outside of the state of Oklahoma, no one roots harder for Brett Venables than Tennessee fans because they're just terrified that Heupel will be the head coach at Oklahoma at some point. But so I guess it wouldn't be Tennessee, but I wanted to ask you, is there one game, and obviously let's take Texas off the table because I know what that game means, but is there one game, listen to the Sooner fans, SEC specifically, that they are most excited about next season? Is it that Missouri game? Is it a late season affair with LSU or Alabama? There's a lot of games to pick from. Is there one that is kind of at the top of that list?
Yeah, well, you just said there's a lot of games to pick from, which is new territory for us and goes to the excitement of it because who was on the home schedule last year in conference? UCF, Iowa State, TCU. I mean, you kind of get the point here. It's like, oh my gosh, Alabama, Tennessee, and even South Carolina's coming home this year. So it's actually tough to choose from. But we're so excited about this. I've done all this content with our listeners already to kind of gauge the audience. I think the Tennessee game is up there because it's your first SEC game, because Josh Heupel's coming back. I think that's a big deal. But in terms of the road games this year, which people are really excited about, because we don't really have a chance to go to cool road games all that much. Where are we going to go? Kansas? Iowa State? Baylor? You know what I mean? Like this is awesome that we get to go to all these cool road environments. I'd say the LSU game is number one. They've kind of owned you recently in some bowl games. They put it on you in the Peach Bowl. They beat you in the national championship back in 2003 in New Orleans. And I don't think OU fans would call that game a rivalry. Certainly LSU fans wouldn't call it a rivalry either. But OU fans still talk to this day about how they were treated in New Orleans for that Sugar Bowl way back in 2003. And to be fair, Michael, I was there. That was my big Christmas present as a 13-year-old, getting to go to that national championship game. I've never seen anything like it. And if you've ever been to a national championship game in New Orleans when LSU's there, maybe you have, but it was insane. Tiger bait just raining down on everyone, in your face, all that. People haven't forgotten about it, and people haven't forgiven LSU fans for how they were treated. So you're getting a lot of, going to Baton Rouge, the belly of the beast. I don't know if we're going to do that. But I do think out of LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss, and Missouri, you'll probably see the most OU fans at that LSU game, the last game of the regular season, because people also want to see Death Valley, right? I mean, we've heard about it for so long. We want to see Death Valley at night. So LSU won for road game, and then everyone wants to go to Ole Miss as well, which is funny to me. I want to go to the Grove too. I'm going to Oxford. But is the game more fun, or what happens outside the stadium more fun? Because at LSU, like the in-game experience is what you're going for. I feel like at Ole Miss, it's everything outside the stadium that everyone's really wanting to experience here.
Right. All right. So, Tyler, last thing for you. Really appreciate your time, but I know it's early. We're recording May 22nd here. Can you give us a record prediction for the Sooners this year? And I realize there's a lot of unknowns, a lot more. So we won't hold this to you or anything. But just curious what you think Oklahoma's debut record in the SEC will be.
Over under a 7.5. I have bet the over on 7.5. I feel good about it. Would have felt better about it if I would have got it at 6.5. I think this is a 9-3 football team. And what keeps me from even going 10-2, which no one's really picking this team nationally to go 10-2. I think that they're better defensively, kind of like we laid out, than people realize. But here's what I got to see from this team. Yes, the offensive line and the run game has to be better. But this hasn't been a good road team for whatever reason the past 2 years. They really struggled at BYU last year. Kind of lucky to win that game. Lost at Kansas. Lost at Oklahoma State. Year before that, they lost at Tech. This just hasn't been a good road team, and I've got to see them become a better road team before I'm ready to pick this to go 10-2. Because Jordan Hare is going to be nuts when OU goes there early. Missouri hates this fan base. That's going to be nuts there. LSU, it's going to be insane. Ole Miss, it's going to be insane. I mean, that's 4 really, really tough home games. So right now, I got this team 9-3. I don't know if that gets you in the 12-team playoff. Maybe you're one of the last teams out. But I got to see some things really improve before I say this is without a doubt a college football playoff team. They're one of the 12.
Right, and just as you were rattling off just those road games, I mean, I think that's going to be 4 top 25 opponents because I think Auburn's going to start 4-0, so that'll get them into the rankings. But yeah, it's just fun to sit here and talk about SEC and Oklahoma in the same sentence. So I can't thank you enough. Before you go, Tyler, can you tell the audience how can they follow you and how can they find your work?
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube, just first and last name, Tyler McComas, trying to do more on that platform. It's softball season around here, so I'm kind of all in on what's going on in softball. I think the SEC has become the best softball conference now, and OU is clearly the most dominant program out there, so that's a great fit as well. On Twitter, at Tyler_McComas is where you can find my tweets. But yeah, man, we talk college football 4 hours a day from 2 to 6 Central. I even do a 1-hour recruiting show from 2 to 3 every single day. So we're talking SEC recruiting. We're talking all that. KREF in the App Store. You can download our app. We're the Ref, located in Norman, but all across Oklahoma. You can hear us worldwide on our app. And we're just doing a lot of SEC content, man, because we're so excited. And one final point on the schedule, because I know everyone who predicts OU to have a tough year cites the schedule, and I think that's fair. I think there's more to the schedule than what people realize. And I wish I had this pulled up in front of you. But go look every SEC game, who the opponent has the week before. And in many cases, the opponent before the week that OU plays them doesn't have anyone. Texas has a bye before they play OU. Ole Miss has a bye before they play OU. Alabama has like one of their SoCon Saturday games, I think, before they play OU. The only team, man, that doesn't have a bye or plays a tough team before they play OU is South Carolina plays Alabama. So it's not just the schedule is really difficult. Everyone has like 2 weeks to prepare for OU before they play them, which is just brutal, man. It's brutal.
Right. And I'm sure it's not the same for Texas. I don't understand that, but that's another conversation for a different day.
Yeah, well, it'll be fun, man.